That was beautiful. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Hello, how are you guys? You doing good? Okay, they're making fun of me over here because I wrote the announcements down. It's been a bit since I've been up here, so I'm just going to take a look and see who all's here. I've missed you guys so much. I'm so excited. Okay, we just have a couple of announcements. And the first one is on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, we are going to meet for midweek. And it's not going to be like old days, which I'm super sad about that. No, we're not going to eat or anything like that, but we're going to meet in here in the sanctuary, kind of like we have been doing, and at 6 o'clock, and then about 6:15, we're going to break out into our little sessions, and Joni's going to take the youth back in the youth room, and the children are going to go back with me back to the toddler room. We're kind of reconfiguring some stuff back there, so until Easter, we're going to meet this way. And then after that, we'll kind of reevaluate and see where we're at, and then let you guys know from then on out what we're going to do. So we're excited about that. Wednesday at 6.
And that'll also be Zoom. You can come
Yes.
in person, or it'll be Zoom live.
Yes. And hello, Zoomers and people online. So we're excited about that. And then our upcoming dinner and a show, virtual dinner and a show. The first time we're doing this, of course, COVID stuff, everything's new and I would say improved, but I don't know about that. So Sunday at 6 o'clock via YouTube we're gonna have our virtual dinner and a show, but we need videos. So Daryl asked if you can have them submitted by Wednesday. And is there a specific time you need them? Just any time on Wednesday?
Sometime Wednesday would be preferable. And if you're recording on your phone, record like this. Horizontal. So if you've got a talent, this is the beautiful thing about it this year. You don't have to be in front of a crowd. You can be in the comfort of your own home when you record it. Singing, dancing, tap dancing, whatever, reciting poetry. I just need a good video, good quality audio and video submitted to me by Wednesday.
Yeah. So we would expect to see a video from everybody. So, okay. I'm just telling you, right, Jean Ann, you and Wayne, you can do something.
We're not doing a telethon.
And then at 5 o'clock on Wednesday, before the actual viewing of our dinner and a show, we're going to have a red carpet event here. And we're going to have popcorn, but I don't know, what are they called? Snack packs? Event packets? Viewing packets, that's right. That was not on my list. Viewing packets, and if just drive through, pick up your viewing packet, and then it's got snacks, popcorn, candy, all those good things. And we can all watch it together, separately, together, from after dinner and a show. You can eat dinner.
That is the dinner.
That is your dinner.
Popcorn is your dinner.
Yeah.
Popcorn and the candy.
You have to do dinner at home, I'm sorry. Or you don't. Let the popcorn, like Daryl said, be your dinner. That's what we're going to do. So anyway, that's going to be at 5 o'clock, and if you can RSVP for that, if you think that's something you're interested in, if you can also RSVP by texting our phone line, our digital communication card via text, and the number is 830-693-0710. And just text that line and let us know if you're going to be coming through at 5, and we'll be happy. It's going to be fun, and we're so excited. And don't forget your videos either, okay? Because it'll be fun. Our offering box is at the back, in the middle of the 2 doors back there. And if you need any information, any help, any questions, prayer requests, please text our number there or call. You can call the office and talk to Kelly or any of us. So thank you so much.
Or Joni. Joni's the one that likes to answer the phone.
Joni loves to answer the phone, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Misty. Let's stand and sing again. Wonderful, merciful Savior, precious Redeemer and friend, who would have thought that a lamb could rescue the souls of men? Oh, you rescue the souls of men. You are the one that we praise. You are the one we adore. a hill far away stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. And I love that old cross where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. Oh, the old rugged cross, so despised by the world, has a wondrous attraction for me. For the dear Lamb of God left His glory above to bear it to dark Calvary. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. To the old rugged cross I will ever be true, its shame and reproach gladly bear. Then He'll call me someday to my home far away, where His glory forever I'll share. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. Please be seated.
That was Moonlight Sonata. That was so good. So, Mark 13. Find that passage in your scriptures, whatever copy. If you're online, you can pause it and go find it and come back. Mark 13, find about verse 14 in this. This is the second sermon in this series. I'm enjoying it. Your enjoyment level is completely up to you. I worked on this week the one for in a couple of weeks in which we destroy the whole world with a fig tree. That's going to be fun. I'm already in good mood. You should be warned. I had a great small group experience with the Seeker class, talking about the Great Commission and baptism. Just a wonderful time. I know we're not ready to launch our in-person small groups just yet. That may be one of the last things that we do, putting people in small groups, breathing on each other in small rooms. But if you're missing out the Zooms, you're really missing out, because our Zoom small groups are really fun. So if you haven't gotten hooked up with that one yet, we have 3 of them that meet on Sunday mornings. Daryl can certainly get you worked in. He's like the guy that can help you. Joni is really good at it. I'm worried someone's going to come down and snatch her away from us, because she's got this technical Zoom thing down. The Lord sent her to us. We needed her. But here we are. Sometimes you define something by saying what it's not, right? American football is not football that they play in other countries. It's not that. My favorite is custard. What's custard? The first definition? It's not ice cream. That's what it is. Well, what is it? Well, you can get specific, but the most important thing you need to know is it's not ice cream. And if you tell someone who loves custard or who serves custard and makes it to you, oh, this is ice cream, they will get angry because that's what custard is not. Jesus kind of has that vibe going on here in the Olivet Discourse. Not custard, but by saying what it's not. The disciples, you will remember, ask him, coming out of the temple, they ask him, they say, so don't you look at all these great big buildings and the blocks? It's so beautiful. And Jesus says, not one stone will be left on top of the other. And they finally get to the Mount of Olives after they've been talking amongst themselves in fearful worry. They get there and they say, when is it going to happen? And then Jesus goes off on all the times it's not going to happen, right? All the stuff, wars, famines, earthquakes, betrayals, persecutions. That's not it. That's not when it's going to happen, Jesus says. That's the birth pangs, if you want to use that metaphor, that image he uses there. That's just normal stuff that happens, Jesus says. But now our text today changes. Look at we're taking Liberty Bites. Look at verse 14. This is so fun. But when you see the abomination of desolation standing where he ought not to be. And that is a he, by the way. It's very personal. The language indicates it is a person doing something. Where he ought not to be, parentheses open, let the reader understand, parentheses closed, comma. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. You will excuse a person if you get caught up in this verse. This verse is delicious. It has so much going on with it. I could probably spend the rest of the afternoon on it. And a lot of people you will read who write about this Olivet Discourse, this scary sermon of Jesus, they will do just that. You know, the verse before, they'll get a couple of pages. The verse after, you get a couple of pages. Verse 14, 27 pages, right? Because there's so much going on here. But I want you to know that the most important word in all of verse 14 is the word when. Because this sets the context. Jesus now is going back to the original question. They asked him, when will this happen? When will this temple be destroyed? And Jesus now comes back to, well, don't worry about the famines and the earthquakes. That's just normal and all that stuff, wars. But when you see this, that's when it reminds me of teaching a person to fish. A couple of times I've taken my children to go fishing when they were younger. They don't really like it too much, especially the slimy parts. But when you're teaching them with like the cane pole and the bobber, right? So when the bobber just starts to bob a little bit, don't mess with it. Leave it alone. If there is a fish down there, it's just playing with it. But it's probably just your bait, right? If you have live bait, the bait will make it move. When do you react? When the cork goes under. That's when. So if Jesus were using this fishing metaphor, which to me seems like a Jesus thing to do, fishers of men, when should we raise the pole and set the hook, Jesus? Well, you're going to see the bobber move a little bit, and it's going to move around and dawdle a little bit, and it may even kind of bob up and down. That's just normal, that's just stuff. But when it goes under, that's when you've got to fish. Same thing. All that other stuff is just normal, but when you see this, now what is it? What are we looking for? What's the thing? What's the sign? What's the sign, Jesus? When you see the abomination of desolation where he ought not be. Let the reader understand. I hope you've blocked out the rest of your afternoon. To me, the most fascinating part of that is let the reader understand. You need to know, Jesus didn't say it that way. Jesus didn't say, when you see the abomination of desolation, let the reader understand where he ought not be. Jesus didn't say that. Someone has inserted that. Now, You find this phraseology here in Mark. You find it in the parallel in Matthew. It's worded different in Luke. Luke does some different stuff with this. Luke talks about when armies surround Jerusalem. That's the Lucan language. Where did it come from? Well, Mark's probably older than Matthew, so Mark may have written it, but Mark's borrowing from someone else, most likely for a lot of this. So someone else has written that phrase. What does that mean? Let the reader understand. It's probably talking about someone like me that in this situation will be reading the Gospel of Mark to a congregation. It's a point. Hey, whoever's reading this, because everyone couldn't read, but whoever's reading this, stop for a minute and explain to the folks what the abomination of desolation is. This is one of the few times in the Bible you have instructions, listen to the preacher. Let the reader understand. So what are we going to unpack this? Well, the reader would tell the congregation, this is a phrase used in Daniel chapter 9, 3 different times in Daniel, to refer to some future event that will be devastating and awful. And most scholars believe it was fulfilled in the year 186. So Daniel's writing, looking into the future, 186, when a Greek ruler who's controlling Jerusalem, named Antiochus Epiphanes, comes into the city, goes to the temple, and erects in the holy place, the Holy of Holies, in the temple that was built there, and he erects a statue of Zeus that looks just like him. He made God in his own image. And there with that statue of Zeus, he also commenced to sacrifice pigs on the altar of the Jewish people before the holy God who said pigs are unclean. Can you imagine what language a Jew might think of a statue of Zeus that looks like the king while you're sacrificing pigs there? What language might they use to describe that? Awful, terrible, what a shame? No, abomination of desolation. That's the language. It's bad. So that's one aspect. The reader needs to know this, but that's not all that's going on. Jesus is not talking about the past. Jesus, I believe, is talking about the future. They asked when, and he's answering when. And he means a future event. When? There's a couple of candidates for the historical view of this. In about 40 A.D., so about 10 years after Jesus says these words, the evil Roman Emperor Caligula comes in, and he has a plan to put a statue of himself in the Jewish temple there at Jerusalem. Now, Caligula, I'm just going to say Google it, but don't look at the pictures. Horrible, horrible, horrible emperor. Apparently, his underlings told him, hey, boss, that's not a good idea. He pulled back that plan. He never did that. He planned to do it, but he never did that. About 30 years after that, Jerusalem fell under the Roman Emperor Titus. It falls to the Romans, and it's terrible. But there was no statue put in the temple. There was no pig offered on the altar. It was just destroyed, leveled to the ground. Before that had happened, the Jewish zealots broke into the temple and killed a lot of people in there. So there's a couple of options. Most people believe Jesus is thinking about the future event of 70 A.D. when Jerusalem is destroyed. And everything goes bad. The abomination that causes desolation. The sacrilegious, appalling sacrilegious event. That it is the destruction of Jerusalem in the hands of these Gentiles, these heathen Romans. But Jesus is also looking into the future, I think even more than that. So hold on to this. It has happened before with Daniel and Epiphanes. Jesus is saying it's going to happen as well with the Romans. But I believe you put all of it together, especially what Paul writes in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, there's another again going to happen. So it happened, it will happen, it's going to happen again. And what we have to determine is, will it happen again and again and again and again? Abomination that causes desolation has with it the power of an unholy moment that literally, not figuratively, causes such destruction that people's lives are changed and devastation comes. Now, the interesting part of this is, what does Jesus say do? Jesus says, when you see this happening, flee to the hills of Jerusalem, the hills of Judea. In other words, get out of town. Leave, Jesus says. And the evidence here is compelling. The Roman historian Josephus, Roman Jewish historian Josephus, tells us that when the Romans destroyed the city of Jerusalem, the Jewish population was devastated, almost practically annihilated. You know who escaped? The Christians who were there. The Jewish Christians got out. Eusebius, a later church historian, tells us why. He says that the Christians who were in Jerusalem left when the Romans were on their way because they had the oracle Jesus gave them to warn them. What oracle had Jesus given his followers? To leave the city when you see things getting bad? Right here. They went to a place called Pella, and they thrived and made it out and rode the war out until later because they fled. This gets us to a key aspect of this passage, fleeing. Look at verse 15. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down, nor enter his house to take anything out. And let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. Ah, and alas for women who are pregnant and for those who are nursing infants in those days. Pray it may not happen in winter. So I did good. I did not stay on abomination of desolation for the whole afternoon. But now we're moving on to when people have to leave. Human migrations. When you're fleeing the destruction of your home, when you're fleeing all that's bad. This is part of human life. And Adam and Eve, in a way, a very, very real way, were migrants forced out of their home because they had set up their own individual abomination of desolation that destroyed their way of living. Keep that in your mind. Abraham leaves Ur and goes to the promised land because God told him. The Israelites leave Egypt and move in. But at the same time, the Philistines come in. Migrations all over the place in the Bible. Jesus was a kind of immigrant. He had to leave when his family, Joseph and Mary, take him away because of the abomination of desolation of Herod, who wanted to usurp God's will in his life. Not too dissimilar, or a potentate does this. Jesus fled. His family takes him, little baby, into Egypt until it's safe to come back. Migrations are all through human history. Whether we think about those, North America is no stranger to such. We always think about the Pilgrims coming over, leaving Europe for religious reasons, economic reasons. Before Europeans got here, you'd had wave of migrations and displaced peoples all over the continent, all the way back to the Clovis people, or perhaps before that. Migrations in Southeast Asia, up and through China, always coming and going. That's why there's a great big wall there to stop those things. All this kinds of stuff through human history. Perhaps the one that we think of the most is the barbarians coming into that. What's Rome? When Rome fell, was at the end of the world. St. Augustine made sure the people of his day didn't think that. Of course, now we have migrations all over the place. The most powerful one in our imagination is coming out of Syria for the last 5 years or so, up around the Anatolia Peninsula, across into Greece and into Europe. All these migrations fleeing. Yeah, migrations. What kind of fleeing? What does it say here? It says, well, Jesus says, when it gets bad, do what? Hold out. Stubbornly stay behind? Resist? Buy a gun? No, what does he say? When it gets bad, leave. Always think of Bonhoeffer. Bonhoeffer, hero of mine, love Bonhoeffer. But he had gotten out of Nazi Germany. He had made it. At sacrifice, his friends and those around him got him. They knew he would be a target, got him out, and he was in America. He was in America where it was safe. He was in New York City. He worshiped at the black churches because he felt more closely akin to them. He was a scholar. He even traveled all the way down into Mexico through Texas. I mean, he was in America. He was safe. He was living. But he had this feeling to go back, to go home and be a part of the solution, he thought. And ended up getting him killed. Maybe because he should have listened to Jesus, who said, flee. This bothers me, this language. As a student of the Bible, do you read it as closely as I do and see and hear? If you're in the field and trouble comes, don't even go home. Don't even go back. If you're on the housetop, don't go downstairs and get your wallet and your credit card and your car keys. Just climb down the outside ladder and get out of here. It's going to be bad. And I worry about my own attachment to things. I have reached middle-aged. I'm comfortable in my middle-aged self. I think I'm wearing middle age kind of well. I have my things. I have my rhythms. I love my books and all the things. I don't know how well I would be able to just, not figuratively, but literally, walk away from it all just to survive. I might be, no, I'm in my house. They'll have to remove over my dead body. Okay, they may say. And Jesus says, flee, leave. Because you should not be, this preaches to me, to my soul. Jamie, should not be that attached to anything of this world that I would give up my life for what? For my cookware? For my copy of American history? No, flee. There's an attachment I have to the things of this world. This passage calls me out on. Because Jesus says, flee, because there'll be time for witness and community building later. But get out. Get out. The language is also telling in another way here. Flee. There's the women who are nursing and with children. That seems so frightening. There's just something about that. But it's a very, very real concern of people traveling. That when you are pregnant with vulnerable peoples, it makes it harder. Woe unto those. It's just going to be harder. It's not necessarily that woe unto people who are pregnant or who have young children, like that's a bad thing. That's a good thing. But when the tribulation comes, when these trials come, it's going to be so hard on you, it's going to make it worse. Harder. It's hard enough to leave and just walk away from your house and all that you have and not take anything with you. But if you are pregnant or have young children, it's going to be that much worse. And so that language. And then pray that it's in the summertime. I've always thought that meant good weather for your traveling. Doesn't that kind of make sense? I always think, I'd rather travel in the summertime anyway. The mountain passes won't be covered with snow. I always think that way. But maybe this is something different. In the hills around Jerusalem in the springtime and winter, they fill up with water. The wadis are full of water, and you can't cross very easily. And so if you're trying to get away from problems coming in, thinking about escaping an invading army, you need to be able to get through. And water and mud and bog prohibit that. There's also one other thing about this passage that you're not going to like me anymore for. Okay, some of you won't. I believe Wayne will still love me. He may disagree with me, but he will still love me. The Bible says he has to. The language here is close to that Luke 17 language that a lot of us have read for a long time a certain way. And that language in Luke 17 runs like this. One will be in the bed, two will be in the bed, and one will be taken and one will be left behind. They'll be at the grinding mill, one will be taken, one will be left behind. And we have been trained in a certain way of reading the Bible to read this as the one who is taken is the good one, the one who's a person of faith. And you don't want to be, what's the word? Left behind. That language is very close to this. Don't go down from your housetop. Don't go back in. But there's no indication of something like people disappearing. In fact, it's more like this. And even that language is martial. The one who gets left behind is the one who makes it out alive. In Luke 17, Jesus connects it to Sodom and Gomorrah and the flood, when everything gets cleansed and wiped away. The one who gets swept away is the one who didn't make it, who died. You want to be the one who gets left behind because you survived when the military came through, when the invading forces came through and just randomly pillaged and murdered and destroyed and did all sorts of other horrible things. You don't want to be taken by them. That's the feel here in this fleeing. Get away from it. Get out ahead of it. Leave when you can. When you see that abomination of desolation, that's when you should leave. This leads to suffering. The language here. Verse 19, for in those days, in 2 weeks we're going to focus on that phrase, in those days. But today we're not. There will be such tribulation as not been from the beginning of the creation that God created until now, and never will be. And if the Lord had not cut short the days, no human being would be saved, but for the sake of the elect, whom he chose, he shortened the days. Let me simplify this. It's going to be bad, Jesus says. How bad? Very, very bad. How bad's very bad? It's going to be worse than it's ever been since the creation of the world. God's going to cut short those days for the elect. If he wouldn't have, there wouldn't be anyone who makes it out alive. No human would survive. That's how bad it's going to be. But God does intervene. Whatever Jesus is talking about, this is how we know this is not just Rome coming in 70. This is some other time that has yet to happen, because it's going to be this bad, so bad, that God himself will intervene to cut short the days. I don't think that means the sun's going to set at 2 in the afternoon. I think it means the number of days of the tribulation are shorter. Bad. Now, process that in your mind. It's going to be worse than it ever has been. A lot of us, and I've heard people say things like, we must be near the end of the world because of COVID. Can I just share with you, COVID is serious. And you guys know how serious I take it here. I've taken some heat and some complaining, but I take it serious. But you know, COVID is not even probably like the 100th worst disease we've dealt with, right? These things have been bad before. Scientists tell us human populations sometimes have dwindled down into like a couple of thousand. Really bad, mostly because of diseases. We don't get most of the diseases because our ancestors survived, so we're immune to a lot of them. Hopefully we'll get immune to this one soon. But these diseases, we're not even close to bad yet. I mean, it's bad, but it's not. I think World War II would have been a time I thought maybe the end was coming. I'm not old enough. I just read about it in history, and then, in colorized on TV. You read, well, World War II had so much. You had nuclear bombs going off. You've got 6 million Jews being exterminated. Now, doesn't that sound biblical like this? When they come, Jesus might have told the Jews in Germany, flee when you see the abomination of desolation setting itself up where he ought not be. Flee. Now, I'm not victim shaming there, but I'm just saying the words. The battles, the casualties, the feeling, the wars, rumors of wars. But you take that in conjunction with, the Great Depression, the Spanish flu. Oh, what was that other thing? World War I. You could excuse someone who had lived through that time period thinking, you know what? I think we're about to check out of here. And then when TV was invented, probably all bets are off. I'm just thinking. You can understand why. As bad as it was, though, was that the end? No. The Black Death in Europe, I think, took like 1/3 to half the population. Huge numbers of people, just entire towns disappeared because they all died. You would have been excused if you'd have thought that was the end. When Rome falls, all these horrible times. How bad was it for Jewish people under Pharaoh's task-masking whip? Horrible. Or Nebuchadnezzar comes through. How horrible? Horrible. Oh, what's the worst though? Jesus specifically says, worse than ever since the creation of the world. What was that time? Oh yeah, when God killed everybody except for the few on a boat? Worse than that? Maybe. That's how bad it's going to be. So ever how bad you think it is now because the politician you like didn't win or did win, or because military forces, when we bombed Syria this week, I told you there's always a war in the Middle East. I don't mean that flippantly, but I mean there's always something. You can't be looking at that kind of thing because Jesus says when it comes down bad, it's going to be how bad? Really bad. This is one of the reasons why I've never ascribed to the belief that somehow we'll have an accidental nuclear war and kill everybody. And the human race will become extinct. Why? Because God will what? He will intervene to save us, to save the elect. Whether that's Jews in Jerusalem or the church, that's for a different discussion. But He will indeed. We cannot accidentally extinguish ourselves completely. We can do great damage. We can do great harm, whether it's through war, environmental degradation. I've noticed that as I read the book of Revelation as I get older, I used to think that only supernatural things could do all of that stuff in there. Now it seems like we can do a lot of that stuff. We can turn the sea red and kill all the fish pretty well. We do a good job of that, don't we? Okay, I'm through meddling. Then he moves down from the fleeing business back to where he started. Verse 21. And then if anyone says to you, look, here's the Christ, or look, there he is. Where's Waldo? Don't believe it. For false Christs, false messiahs, false prophets will arise and perform signs and wonders to lead astray, if possible, the elect. Be on guard. I've told you these things beforehand. Be on guard. There it is. So he comes back to where he started. He starts this pericope, this section, with the abomination of desolation, which is a religious language. When someone comes in and sets up themselves where he ought not be as the focus of religious devotion, such that destruction comes. So now he comes back to false teachers and false messiahs who are claiming to have this place of privilege, of supernatural power. And it seems like they have supernatural power. They do signs and wonders and miracles. They seem to have it. I don't want to belabor this point too much. False teachers look good. They smell good. They have glitzy promotional packages. And they seem to sometimes do amazing things. People will come up on crutches and leave walking. People will be healed. They'll do signs and it looks like the real thing. But Jesus says they're not. They're false. They're false messiahs. How can you tell? Because they've set themselves up as an individual to that place where only God ought to be. They've done this. They've created the appearance of it. And we need to watch it, because we in the evangelical tradition, we are very guilty of being swayed by supernatural phenomenon. And I believe in supernatural stuff. You know that about me. But not all supernatural phenomenon are from God. The evil powers of this world can do tricks. And their job, their hobby, Satan's hobby is to deceive you, right? My hobby is to read and cook. Satan's hobby is to deceive you. Understand. Let the reader understand. This is what he's out to do. So don't be deceived. This last verse here, verse 23 in our section today, don't be deceived. Don't be unaware. Don't be fooled. Recognize the lies that are out there. These lies would seek to have us buy into a false spirituality, into a false way of looking at things, into things that aren't true. I believe we live in an age filled with lies. Political lies, religious lies, cultural lies, entertainment lies. We will lie about anything. We need to not do that. We must be committed to truth in all its forms, because the devil traffics in lies. Don't be deceived. And one of the things he wants to deceive you about most is when these big things start happening, he wants to oversell it to you. When Jesus is all about keeping your eyes on him. In fact, this abomination that causes desolation is still fascinating to me. I told you I'd gone on from that, but now I'm not. I'm going back to it. That's not a lie. That's rhetorical technique. So the language here, my Bible, abomination that causes desolation, is a little more literal. Appalling sacrilege is how some will think of it this way. But it's not the abomination that gets me, it's the desolation that gets me. So whatever is happening, it's active. There's going to be an act of worship or devotion to something that will physically cause this destruction. And now we're to Jesus' idea. It happened in the past, it's going to happen in the future, and then it will happen again. I actually believe at a very practical level, we all should be aware of this happening again and again and again and again, because you and me as individuals are always capable of putting somewhere where he ought not be, of making someone the focus of our attention and of our devotion. Our body, our lives, we are a temple of the Holy Spirit, and we are capable of putting an abomination at the center of our being. I think of all sorts of things, and I'm going to give you my quick list of 4. You make your own list because it works. One is, of course, I think science would love to be that place of worship and adoration for us, especially technological science. All the guys that run Silicon Valley, they believe that they're the Messiah who can fix everything. They really do. They think that through technology, they can solve poverty and war and even death. Singularity's coming, they say, as if it's the second coming of Jesus. That's exactly how they talk about stuff. They've set themselves up. Now, every really horrible sci-fi movie I've ever seen starts with that premise, where science happens, and what happens? It walks out of the laboratory. And it begins to destroy things. And people have to leave. And people die. And it's bad. And then science says, but we can fix it. Jesus starts with it and finishes with it. Because false messiahs will create the problem and then say we're the only solution to the problem. Trust in us. Ooh. Like Chernobyl comes to mind. Some of you aren't old enough to remember Chernobyl. It was bad. Nuclear reactor, boom, lots of people died. And the scene is just like Jesus describes there. You don't go home. You don't get your stuff. You're told to leave right now. You can, film crews, people, you go back. It's all just like they left it. But that's not the only one. I love science when it does right. Just don't put your faith and trust in it. Just like never trust the Texas Longhorns in a football game. Never, ever trust. I think politicians can do that. The 20th century is rife with examples. From Hitler to Stalin to Mao. Put your trust in me. And what happens? Destruction, desolation, death, war. We get hung up on what happened in Western Europe for good reasons. But we really don't know how many people Stalin killed in his own country. Just Millions upon millions. And then China, Maoist China, all of the things that Mao did. Cult of personalities. Now, our system's pretty good here. We have checks and balances that keep us from going that direction. But you and your heart and me and my heart, we're always susceptible to trusting in a human being who promises everything to us and believing in them. There's another source of this abomination, and you're going to think I've gone crazy now. You probably already think I've gone crazy. And that is church. We can make church the end-all to be-all in our culture with its systems and its teaching and its platforms, especially preachers with their big hair and their goofy smiles and their TV ministries, and I'm not jealous. We make them the focus of our devotion. Every one of us here who've been following Christ for a long time can point to a significant spiritual leader that we loved and adored and probably worshiped a little bit too much who fell. And it hurt us. It set us back. Why? It's the abomination that leads to desolation. It causes destruction in its wake when you put anybody at the center of your spiritual life who ought not be there. One more. And that's the idol we all look to every day. And we go to the mirror, and we turn the lights on, and we see ourselves. We put ourselves in that spot of ultimate truth where we believe we are the arbiter of everything. We will submit to no one's goodwill. We will submit to no one's ideas. We alone are the focus of our devotion. We will take care of ourselves. We will pamper ourselves. We sacrifice. Every people should be sacrificing for me. People should be serving me. Oh, we do it so quickly and so easily. And what that leads to is destruction. Most people who have destroyed their lives do so because they put themselves as the center and arbiter of all that is good. And what is good is whatever they want to do right then. See, Jesus is talking about Daniel, Greek rulers in 186 BC, the Romans in maybe 40, maybe the Zealots, maybe Titus in 70. Maybe he's talking a little bit about the fall of Rome. Maybe he's talking a little bit about again and again, you and me. But someday in the future, we put all the New Testament's pieces together, there will be an ultimate abomination of desolation in which you and I will be asked to forsake the Lord and serve. You can't accidentally do it. It's not getting a Social Security number, I promise you. You'll be asked to forsake the Lord in order to move forward with your life. And that moment is when destruction will begin to reap. And Jesus says, flee, run. Watch out for the liars. See, this is fun, but it's real. It's real serious. Father, I thank you today for your word. I have babbled on too long with it, Father. And I have engaged in probably a little too much flippancy with it. But I pray that your word would powerfully provoke inside of our heart serious reflection as to the false idols we put in the center of our lives, as to the attachments we have to this world that we would not be able to leave behind when we should, and that we would consider the lies that we have believed and nourished that we need to forsake in order to follow you, to not be deceived, to be alert. This is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Stand this morning as we recite our benediction together and are dismissed. Glory to God in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. You are dismissed.